Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. As usual, my name is Chef Andy, and today we are going to be touching on some beautiful locally inspired dishes, and we are going to be playing around with two particular ones that are a big favorite to kids and locals at home while you're watching. We're going to be doing some chips mayai, and I'm also going to be bringing a beautiful twist to the chips masala. And before we do so, we're going to start off by looking at some of the ingredients which we're going to be working with today. And I'm going to start from the very front with cayenne pepper there to my very closest right. We also have some tomato paste, some cumin powder, and some fennel seeds. I'm also going to be using some mixed spices, some paprika powder, some curry powder, and some garlic powder. We're also going to be improvising with a bit of chilies, which you can opt to use or not use on this recipe. I also have some coriander seeds there, some chopped chives, some peeled potatoes, about 4 large pieces will do. I've also got some beautiful coriander there, a bit of garlic and some ginger root there, a bit of chopped red onion, a bit of ketchup as well, some cherry tomatoes just to garnish, a bit of cooking oil, which could either be olive oil or vegetable oil, whichever one you prefer. We're also going to be using some regular local eggs. And last but not least, I also have some pureed tomatoes, which we're going to be using to make our masala sauce. So if you're going to be taking some recipes or writing down some of the details coming from this particular episode, I do give you this chance to grab your pens and papers. But when we do come back, I'm going to take you through this nice, beautiful, and simple preparation. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just catching up with us, we just finished the introduction of the ingredients we're working with to my right. I'm just about to start off some very, very beautiful dishes, which some of you actually really love to enjoy on your weekends or particular holiday seasons when you're just lazing on the couch and enjoying a very, very beautiful movie. I'm going to be showing you how to make a chips masala and a chips mayai. So one particular thing you may know about the dishes, they're actually very much comfort food. So you can actually alternate these dishes for a light lunch, a simple snack, or even something just to build your energy and appetite before you leave the house. So we're going to start off very simply by doing the fries. And for that, I'm going to be using some just regular large King Edward potatoes. And we're going to start off by first chopping these up. So remember, it actually saves time to peel your potatoes. Just leave them soaking and ready to go. And it will actually save you time during your lunch preparations. So I'm going to start off by trimming the potato. And some of you may want to actually learn a trick or two about getting that beautiful, perfect slice of a potato, which I'm going to show you now. So very simply, begin by just taking a bit of the side of the potato, just a very simple slice, and that should be able to actually help you hold your potato stability well onto the board. And we're going to continue to do the same, going round and turning once each time. So you should actually by this stage have about four equal wedges just trimmed off the sides. And now we are going to just begin to slice that into about 1/4 of an inch in thickness. Once that is done, assemble the pieces together once more and continue to cut your very thin strips of fries. So this should actually be able to give you a nice, beautiful cube size shape like that, as you can see. And one particular technique to cutting your potatoes this way is it always ensures that you actually get some beautifully looking French fries. So we're going to just return those to a bowl of water. and I'm going to continue to do the same with the rest of the potatoes. So remember to always slice as thin as you can from the edge, making sure to get a nice beautiful symmetry each time. And some of you may also want to find out what could one actually use the trimmings on the side. So you can actually, if you're going to be prepping this and you're going to be showing off some of your cooking skills, you may actually consider this unusable for that part, and this actually comes in handy later on, which you may actually be able to use to make some mashed potatoes, or you can actually just fry them later on and serve them even to your kids when they're running around before you serve your meal, and that actually should ensure that you don't waste any of your trimmings. So we're just going to continue to slice the potato as we did before, making sure to get about 3 equally thick slices. Reassemble them together once more and continue to just chop that right through, making sure to get some beautiful strips of potato, and just continue to do the same to the very end. Something I could also mention about the dishes we're going to be making on the show today. These are particularly very handy to be able to, they're particularly handy if you can be able to train this to your kids or show your kids how to make them for themselves, and particularly just for the chips mayai, which also comes as a very, very nutritious and tasty breakfast alternative. This your kids may actually be able to do on their own. You can actually also similarly use the same chips mayai recipe even as a breakfast alternative for those of you who are looking for a bit of a protein filled kind of breakfast, and it does the trick and push you through the day quite well. So we're just going to continue off to finish off the last piece of the potato there. Right, so just as we did with the rest, always just reassemble them together. It makes it easy to chop everything up at once. And then just proceed to cut your fries out nice and slow. And that should actually be able to give you a nice large portion for one. So I'm just going to proceed to discard some of our trimmings, which we're not going to be using at this point. And all you need to do now is just pour out the excess water from your container there or your bowl. And something also very, very handy to use in the kitchen, I like to particularly use a strainer to drain my potatoes. So I'm just going to pour those in there. Just give that a quick shake, and you can actually set those right next to you while you allow your oil to heat up, and this should actually give it enough time for you to drain your potatoes before going on to frying them. So we're going to sit those on the side for a little bit while they drain. And while we do that, we're just going to turn our board around and just get a separate knife. And for now, for this, we're going to start off a very, very simple technique of making your sauce, which is basically your masala sauce for your chips. So very, very simply start by heating a pan. And proceed now to start by peeling some of your garlic. I'm using about 2 to 3 cloves there. Now we're just going to proceed to finish off the garlic by chopping that as fine as you possibly can, but not concentrating so much on it because we do have a pestle and mortar which will aid in crushing this a little further. So we're going to add our garlic into the mortar first. We're also going to be using some ginger root, so I'm just going to first of all just cut that into some nice thin slices, and now proceed to chop that as fine as you possibly can as well. Right, so all that goes into your mortar as well. And you can proceed to discard the rest. And now next up, we're going to proceed to crushing this, but we're going to add one last and final detail to this mixture, which is our coriander seeds. Remember, those do need quite a bit of pounding. They're not as easy to use as your finer spices, so very, very crucial to actually add them into the mortar. It will actually also help you to break up everything else. So once that's nicely pounded down, continue now using your mortar and using the sides of your mortar, continue to use those to break that a little further. Right, so nice beautiful workout before you begin your cooking. So that will just go straight onto your hot pan, which you begin first by heating up some oil. Of course, always remembering that you should actually give your oil just a bit of time to heat up before frying anything in your pan. This allows also for you to actually cook down a little bit of the cholesterol content of the oil, only allowing you to use the only healthy part, which is the very, very beautiful oil remaining behind. So just begin by swirling your pan around, making sure to coat as much of the surface as possible. And once that's done, using your pestle, empty your mortar out. Also give it a pat, should actually help you to get any of the small bits out of your mortar. Right, simple as that. And now all we are going to do is proceed to fry those, giving them anywhere between about 30 seconds to a minute to just get really fragrant. And while those continue, we're also going to add in our potatoes. So our oil is nice and hot. We're definitely going to try for our luck. First of all, always make sure your oil is hot before adding everything else. So we're going to add one piece first. Once you can actually hear that beautiful sizzle of the oil, we can now proceed to add everything else. So be sure to add that small bits at a time. And of course, always make sure as well not to add too much at once to actually allow your fries to cook very evenly. So we're just going to mix those up a little bit with a spoon. And now we're just going to allow those to continue to cook for their first cooking. So we're basically going to be cooking our fries in 2 stages. This is actually to allow them first of all to get a bit of cooking right through to the center. And now we're going to now proceed to do the last and final cooking to really give them the color. And while that continues, just direct your attention back to the pan. So you've got some nice beautifully fried garlic there. We're going to add in our chives. And last but not least, our onions. And all you're going to do now is proceed to fry those together, giving of course a bit of time for your oils to really get a bit fragrant. And just till the point where you notice that your garlic has just started to sweat and your onions are now nice and sweaty, we are going to proceed to add everything else. So I'm going to start off with some of my thyme and my garlic powder. To that we're also going to add a bit of some curry powder and some paprika powder. And we're just going to give that just a few seconds to allow the spices to really come up, and you can actually be able to smell that right through the studio right now. Right, so now that your mixture is nice and dry, it's done its first cooking and you've actually got your spices a little bit more activated, just going to turn down your heat and we're going to pour the whole mixture into a bowl, reserving it just to add a little bit later. So be very, very wary to always remember to actually heat up your dried spices a little bit just before continuing to cook everything else. Remember that particularly helps in 2 ways. It helps you to really activate the flavors of your spices, and it actually allows you to really, really get the best out of your spices as well. So remember one particular crucial thing: start with a hot pan, very, very little oil. Cook your spices out and pour them out. This should allow them to stop overcooking, and it actually gives them a bit of time to really just remove all the juices and the aromas. So to the same pan, I've got a nice big jug here full of some 2 to 3 pieces of tomatoes. So I'm using 2 large, and you can also use about 3 medium tomatoes. So we're just going to pour that into the pan. And basically the reason for this is to allow the tomatoes to start to cook. Also allows you to really cook off all the acid in the tomatoes, and it actually starts to really thicken the sauce very, very beautifully at this point. And all you're going to do now is, using a wooden spoon, just continue to mix that, giving it a check maybe every minute to 2 minutes mark. And now we're just going to turn up the heat a little bit and allow that to continue to simmer really, really quickly. And now, just to bring your attention to the other end, our potatoes are nicely browned from the first cooking stage. So all we are going to do now is remove those and allow them to just drain lightly in a separate container with a bit of parchment paper. And as you can see, the color in the potatoes is nice and beautiful. And that's basically the color you're looking for. Now we're going to set those aside and proceed to add all the other potatoes that we had remaining. Of course, taking precaution not to burn yourself at this stage. Right, so while we actually give our potatoes a bit of time to cook, we're just going to bring our attention back to the other pan. Now you can actually be able to tell after a few minutes of cooking your tomatoes that the juices will actually start to cook out, and it's actually going to start looking like a very, very thick consistency. We're just going to turn up the heat a little bit, and we're going to add our onion, garlic and dry herb mixture. Use a spoon to just get everything out of your bowl. Right, and at this stage we're just going to mix everything together. And as soon as you add that, you will notice a nice beautiful change in appearance, especially with your masala mixture. You do manage to see the beautiful hints of gold specks there from the garlic and the onions. And now while that continues, we're going to add now everything else to the pan that we had remaining, starting with our tomato paste. So I'm using about 1.5 tablespoons. You can use less or more depending on the preference of your diners. Then I'm also going to add some mixed spices, some cayenne pepper for a little bit of heat, so a very, very small pinch. And last but not least, some cumin powder. That really, really just brings out the beautiful aroma for your masala sauce. And using a wooden spoon, we're just going to proceed to mix everything together. And of course, always paying attention to your sauce. Always very handy to continue mixing your sauce while it cooks. It does actually allow for your sauce to really thicken a little faster, for your flavors to really spread out in the pan a little quick as well. And it also manages to give you a nice beautiful feel of your sauce while it continues to cook down. Right, so by this time you should actually be able to fill up your house with a bit of a beautiful cumin and garlic aroma. This could actually really, really give you quite a bit of an appetite, I must say. Now while that continues, we're just going to continue mixing just up until the point where you notice most of the liquid is actually evaporated and your masala mixture is starting to look a little thick. And that would now bring us to the almost final stage where we are going to be seasoning that. So very, very handy to add just a bit of salt at this stage. So I'm adding in about 3/4 teaspoon. And we're just going to continue mixing that and cooking it down right up until you can actually be able to just move your spoon right through the pan there and notice that there is not really any liquid at the bottom. And once you've come this far, your masala sauce is just almost done, but we are actually going to be cooking it in 2 parts, so I'm actually going to give it a bit of time now. to actually cool off just a little bit before we put it back on the heat. Remember, one particular beautiful hint about cooking your sauce two different steps is basically to allow the flavors to really build as you continue, and also it allows for you to not overcook it, basically taking out most of your nutrients. So it's very, very handy to actually take some beautiful steps when making something as simple as a masala. You will actually taste the difference right at the end. Okay, so our masala mixture is now nice and thick. If you can be able to see that from the pan, you should actually be able to spoon more like a cooked kind of salsa consistency. The aromas really come out really well, so you do actually start to appreciate the essence of cooking or rather heating up your dried spices first and then adding everything else later. So the aromas are really building up there. Right, so up to this stage we can actually now turn down our heat completely. Just give our masala sauce just a few minutes to just really blend the flavors. And while that continues, we're gonna come back and check on our potatoes. So those are a little far. We should actually be able to take them out maybe in the next minute to two. But while that continues, we do have a few other ingredients here that we are working with. So I'm going to start off by cracking our eggs. Now for this particular recipe, we're going to be using just some regular sized eggs. And these are very, very particularly beautiful for the fact that they do come with that extra bit of white, a nice beautiful balance of albumin to egg yolk, which should actually be able to make a very, very beautiful omelette. So I'm just going to proceed to crack everything in there. So I'm using 3 eggs for one portion. You can actually scale down to 2 eggs depending on the person you're making the dish for. But for particular adult portion, 2 to 3 eggs should actually give you a very, very beautiful dish for one. Right, so simple as that. We're just going to proceed now to add a small pinch of salt in there. And using a whisk, just going to break those yolks by whisking that very quickly. And once all your 3 eggs are combined, we can actually now proceed to leave that on the side for just a little bit. And you can actually now discard your whisk. Now just bringing back your attention to the fries, they're now just beautifully golden. We're now going to proceed to take those out of the oil. And remember, one particular thing to remember as well with fries, especially once you're going to be cooking them twice, always handy to cook them almost 3/4 way. This will actually allow for you to have some beautiful crispness to them when you're cooking them for the second time. And it actually also allows for you to not overcook your potatoes, which is something you're looking at this stage. So our potatoes are nicely, beautifully colored there. You can see the beautiful brown in there. So now, because we're not going to be serving this directly as they are, we are going to set them aside just for a little bit. Always remember to just give that a bit of a shake, allowing most of that oil to escape. And you can actually just take out your parchment paper at this stage and pat down any excess oils from the top and proceed to discard that in your bin. Now next up, very, very simple. Just going to place that on the side here. Now the next step is a very, very simple one. It's actually just a matter of finishing off the dishes. But before we get to that part, I will take this time to actually give you another chance to refresh yourselves if you are a little pressed. But we are going to come back very, very shortly, so please don't touch that dial. You don't want to miss what we're going to be doing next. See you in a short while. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who have just been with us, before we took the break, we were just finishing off a few of the condiments and some of the ingredients we would need for the last and final stage, which is the last stage that we are at right now. And for that, I'm going to be having just two things to show you at this particular stage. And I'm going to start with one of the easiest ones, which is basically your chips masala. So very, very importantly, begin by heating up a pan. And to that you will add just a small dash of oil and just allow that a bit of time to heat up. We are also going to be using a bit of the fresh coriander seated next to me here. So I'm going to just quickly chop that up. Right, so nice, beautiful, rough chop, nothing fancy for this particular stage. Right, once that's done, we're going to now proceed to heat up some of our masala sauce that we made a little earlier. For those of you who may have missed what we were doing earlier, remember we are also on Facebook Live. We are also on Facebook, so you can actually be able to recap most of what you missed. So I'm going to start by adding one beautiful heap there of the masala sauce. We're going to add just a little bit. And I'm going to start off by first frying that up to get it nice and hot. Give that a nice mixture. And next up, we're going to add our main ingredient to that, which is the fries, as we mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to pour in just about half of our mixture that we did, and we're going to reserve the rest for our chips mayai to come. So start off by just frying everything together like so. Just toss that, give it a nice beautiful mix there. Remember, your potatoes are already cooked, so you don't really want to have that on the pan too long. We're going to also add to that a bit of that beautiful fresh coriander. Now proceed to just mix everything together. And now just for the last and final part, what actually really gives that beautiful finish and that slickness to your chips masala, a bit of some regular ketchup. I'm going to be using about 3 teaspoons. And now just proceed to mix that together. Nice and saucy mixture there. Proceed to break it up really lightly with your spoon. And now finally just proceed to plate everything. So we're just going to take that off the pan and allow our next pan to heat up real quick. So very simply, using a ladle, I'm just going to proceed to plate that beautiful chips masala right at the center there. Very simple dish, something that most of you can now be able to make on your own. A few pointers maybe on that. You can actually be able to do your masala earlier in advance, so you don't really have to do that right at the end, which will actually give you quite a bit of time to be able to prepare everything else for your dish. But a masala simple as that can actually be consumed by kids under the age of 10. Just remember, particularly for that recipe, if you are going to be giving this to kids, try and really cut back on the very spicy and hot spices, especially the cayenne pepper and the paprika, and it should actually work to be a very beautiful substitute for a small quick lunch meal. Now next up, we're going to just finish off that very traditionally, just a nice beautiful piece of chili on the side there. And traditionally that would actually be left there, and you would actually be biting into it while consuming your chips masala. But that would only be for people who are really looking for that extra bit of heat. Now for the last and final one, we're going to proceed to heat up the pan once more. And now this particularly for those of you, especially those who are looking at nice, quick and handy meals to be able to have in the morning. You may actually have a bit of fries that maybe you had takeout last night and you have a bit of chips remaining. It's not really handy or advised to actually just chuck that away. You can actually be able to reuse. And this is a particularly good recipe for using a bit of those fries that you had maybe from the previous night and you just want to really incorporate them into a nice quick handy dish or just a very quick breakfast. Again, we're going to start off with just a bit of oil in the pan. Be sure to swirl your pan around. Remember, you are going to be pouring some egg in here, so very, very crucial that you actually have quite a nice, beautiful coat of oil in your pan. I'm using a non-stick pan for this particular recipe, so if you don't have a pan such as mine, you could actually use any regular pan whatsoever, but very importantly, always make sure that your pan really, really gets hot enough to be able to actually cook your egg as quick as possible without really burning or giving it a very dark color at the end. So very quickly, as soon as that's done, we're just going to go straight ahead to add our egg mixture. So I'm using 3 large eggs for this. Once that's in, we're just going to proceed to just move our pan around. Of course, making sure to spread out as much egg onto the pan as possible. Once you have the first layer all covered up, you can actually just using a lifter there or a ladle, just tuck a bit of the egg in and tilt your pan back, and that should actually allow for the excess egg mixture to roll right under the egg itself. So simple as that. Always very, very important. Never forget to season your food. So I'm going to just season lightly with a bit of salt. And I'm also going to add a bit of some peppers, black pepper, crushed black pepper. And to that, I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of our remaining coriander there. Right, so now you basically are now going to give that just a bit of time to really cook from the bottom. And you're going to proceed to add your fries right over the top. Making sure, of course, to add them to 1/2 of your pan side. Remember, you are going to be folding in that egg, so just probably spread them out towards 1/2 of the egg mixture that's already cooking. And basically now give that a bit of time to really cook through the bottom. You can actually lift a bit of the egg just to make sure, and if the color is right, you can proceed to turn everything around. So very, very particularly simple technique. I like to just push my lifter right underneath the one side that doesn't have the potatoes, and all you're going to do is just turn that over and basically encase all your potatoes right in the center there, and then just proceed to press that really down, making sure to encase everything right on the inside. And you should actually now be able to really get that beautiful aroma of the potatoes just steaming inside your egg pocket. Right, simple as that. Be sure to always give it a turn as well. Remember, you are only cooking one side of the egg, so very important that you do turn it over a few times. So very simple technique I like to use to turn my egg. Simple as this. Put a bit of your ladle right under the bottom of the pan, and make sure to hold with the other hand, hold the handle with the other hand, and very simply just by weighing about as much of weight as the pan is, you should actually be able to turn this over very easily. So ladle right over the bottom, toss the pan in the air, and it should actually allow you to turn. So we're just going to go for it. Simple as that. As you can see, a nice beautiful golden finish to the egg. At this stage, I'm just going to continue to press down completely. That is basically to make sure that any particular liquid or uncooked egg that is in there will actually be really compressed with that temperature, and that should be able to give you a nice, beautifully well done cooked egg. So simple as that. Just going to allow that to just quickly finish cooking off on the other side. And while we do so, I do have some cherry tomatoes here which I'll be using just to garnish our plate. I'm just going to slice a few pieces there. And very, very simply, a nice way to really uplift the flavors and the juices from the tomato. Take a small pinch of salt, sprinkle that right over the top, and you can actually be able to just move those onto the side of your plate like that. Similar just to the other one, I like to just leave a nice big slice of chili right at the back. Remember, it is a very, very beautiful addition to every dish, and it is very rich in vitamins, just for those of you who didn't know. And now our egg is now done, so very, very simply just turn off your heat, give that a bit of shake, making sure it's not stuck to the bottom. And using a nice big pan like the one we have today, you should actually be able to just slide your egg straight onto your plate, and you can actually now serve that straight to your table as is. I hope you've actually managed to pick up something really interesting on the show today, and I hope it has been fun joining me on the show as well. My name is Chef Andy once more, and from the BrandPlus studios, I do also like to remind you, ladies and gentlemen out there, that we are also on Facebook Live, so don't forget to tune in at 1 p.m. every particular day. Thank you so much once again, and until the next episode, have a lovely lunch and see you soon.